What is up, everybody? Welcome to a Comic Book Club bonus episode all about...
Everybody loves a bonus.
Oh,
we're working overtime today.
All about the Batman. I'm Alex. Yes, what? I'm Alex. We introduce each other at the top of the podcast.
I'm Batman.
I'm Justin.
I'm Vengeance. And
yes.
Yeah, there we go.
I'm the Knight.
So we are going to be talking about the Batman just out in theaters. I'll get this out of the way. Big spoiler warning here. If you haven't seen the movie in theaters, don't listen to this yet. We're going to go full on spoilers
other DC
here.
Stuff, you know?
Full on review. I'm getting a little sense of what you thought about the movie already, Pete. Thank you for interrupting. But I'm trying to tell folks, if you don't want spoilers, turn this off now because we're going to get into it. But before we get into the specific plot stuff, again, I have a pretty fair sense what Pete thought here, but why don't we talk overview of what we thought about the movie?
We should do a Doom Patrol podcast instead of this.
All right, come on.
Let's focus up here. I know we've worked a long day in the podcasting mine, but it's time to put it together for our overtime bonus.
Yes. Why don't we start with Justin, since we haven't gotten a sense of his opinion first?
Great choice.
We all saw it in theaters because obviously it's not on streaming.
Yep,
you saw it last night.
Justin went all the way to Atlanta to see it in theaters. So
Best place
real
to see
dedication.
A movie.
Yeah.
Best place.
Great.
You get a big bucket of peaches, and then you just sit down at the movie and you eat the peaches while you're watching the movie.
There's peaches
Georgia
everywhere
peaches,
down here.
That's great.
I actually went and saw it with the Georgia Peaches from A League of Their Own, which was
Wow.
great to really see.
Do they still play? They still got it?
They're still down here. They're everywhere down here. You should come to Atlanta. It's a big League of Their Own. It's like a League of Their Own free theme park.
Where do you stand on that? Do you think she dropped it on purpose?
Okay, Pete, enough. Just I know you don't want to talk about this movie. Let's talk about it. Because if I tuned in for a Batman podcast, I would be going insane right now. Justin, what did you think of the movie?
Alex is Alfreding us here, and I think he means business.
Oh, man.
I really liked a lot of the movie. I saw it at 9:45 here in Atlanta. If you're going to get into
PM
it,
or AM?
PM.
Okay.
After a 4-hour flight, and I'll tell you what, it was long. You walked out of this movie at 1 a.m. and I was like, I definitely took a couple micro naps during some of the later plot explanations. But I thought it was shot really well. I like the new look, and I loved the way that Batman was in this movie. It felt like some Frank Miller era Batman.
Oh, wow, really? You're gonna
direct
put that
from
on
page.
You're going to put that on it?
It did. I like. He was sort of like. I
agree that it was shot like there was really moving shots, like the kiss.
Wait,
moment
before you get into it, what time of
just...
day did you see it, Pete? What time of day did you see it?
Why is that important?
Oh, I don't know. You were talking about peaches for a while.
I don't know.
Well, I went to see it at 8:30 in the morning. I woke up 6:30, went out to the theater. Did not fall asleep the entire time. I was nice and fresh the entire movie. So I think that I do honestly think that probably affected my experience in a different way because it is a long movie. But it being the first thing I did out of the day, I was like, all right, I'm ready to go. And I felt good the entire time.
Was there, oh wow, I'm really surprised that you went that early. But was there a lot of kids in there? Because usually it was
a family showing. They had all the lights on. Kids were screaming the entire time.
Yeah.
In horror, mind you.
Yeah, naturally.
No, it was a regular showing. It was the Alamo Draft House. Everybody was very nice and quiet and respectful and reacted when they were supposed to react, but no phones or anything. It was a good experience. It was a good theatrical experience.
See, I feel like I need to see it again because I almost fought the two people sitting next to me, and the guy on the other side of me fell asleep hard in the middle of the movie and was snoring like crazy. So, like, I didn't have a good experience, so I want to redo to see it again because I feel like it did affect me and my viewing experience because I had to keep yelling, "Shut up."
Yelling
father-son duo were acting like they were in their living room and nobody else was around and just, Dad, what's that? Dad, who's that? What's that, Dad?
And every time it was like, it's fucking Batman. I have said this 5 times. Stop asking me who Batman is.
Oh my God. But I do think it was beautiful shot. Like there was some real moving moments. I love the score. I felt like Batman was a little too emo for me. Like it got a little bit Spider-Man kind of fucking like when his hair, he was like, oh, I don't know who Bruce Wayne is yet.
He definitely listens to My Chemical Romance. I think we could all agree on that.
He was lurching the fuck around a lot of it. And I was like, dude, it's going to be obvious that
I'll
you're the
throw out,
Batman
before I throw out
like...
my opinion about the movie, I do think in the next movie, the villain that Bruce Wayne should fight is Lockjaw and like ground teeth, because the entire time Robert Pattinson was so tight in his jaw, I was getting worried about him.
Well, I mean, since the jaw was sort of the main focus of what we saw on the screen, like that jaw was acting hard. I was in an acting class with Pattinson's jaw, just the jaw. Wow. Really good, really emotive actor.
Was he cool? Did he sign stuff afterwards, or was he really?
It was hard to get the Sharpie in his teeth because he was gritting them so hard to sign anything.
I feel like he's got to put a bid in at night or something so he doesn't grind his teeth.
Totally. Can I throw out? I'm going to throw this out just so I can get Pete really mad at me, and then we can kind of move on from there because it's definitely on me. Great. I'm going to say my statement. Pete's going to get upset. I'm going to clarify my statement, and then Pete's going to get more upset. Does that sound good to everybody?
Oh man,
what a way to call your shot.
Yeah, all right. I mean, we've been doing this podcast for a while. Okay, this was the greatest on-screen live-action Batman I have ever seen.
What the fuck did you just say out loud?
So let me clarify what I was saying. Yeah. So what I mean is this was not the best Batman movie. I think Dark Knight is probably better. I love Batman Returns more. I think some of the cartoon stuff like Mask of the Phantasm is absolutely
one of the greatest
fantastic.
Batman movies of all time.
Incredible. But this movie, while I was watching it, this is the first time I felt like I was watching an accurate portrayal of Batman on screen. Like Batman from the comics. And there were so many different moments in here.
What does that even mean?
Legitimately, I felt like you, Pete, and I thought about you, Pete, because that opening narration, that beginning 5 minutes.
You mean the Punisher War Journal fucking ripoff?
Yes, it was.
I
log
almost
day 47.
I almost stood up and cheered at the end of that because I was like, you got it. Like, the Nolan movies, as much as I love them and as well crafted as they are, I think you still have Christian Bale doing the voice. And it's not, other than Batman Begins, which I think does actually get to Batman a little bit, like it's mostly about other things. It's about the villains. It's about other themes. There are other things Nolan wants to deal with. All of the Tim Burton movies and Batman Forever, Batman Returns, that's way more about the villains. That's not really Batman. He's not doing much in the movies. He's just kind of standing there and walking in. And all of the Ben Affleck stuff is just like him shooting and killing people and breaking their necks and murdering them. And it's impossible to get past it being Ben Affleck the entire time. Here, this legitimately felt to me like Matt Reeves and company got who Batman is from the comics in year 2 and brought it 100% accurately on screen. And that to me, despite like I have some issues with the movie, despite to me that was so pleasing the entire runtime, it made me very, very happy.
Well, that's nice. That's good for you. You just said some of the craziest shit along the way. I don't know how to
but I was accurate about the way this was going to roll out, right?
Yes, you did. You called it. You're like the Riddler of that podcasting description.
Yeah, can you get like a shitty trench coat and wrap it around your face when you talk to me?
Did you know that a flying rat could also be a Pete?
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that in a minute.
There's plenty to get to there.
Let me say though, on going off of Alex, Pete, and then you can have your I'll call it a rant.
Thank you.
I agree with you. I think the way it was shot and the way they just used different shots and sort of oddly framed shots was so comic booky, I thought, and it gave us sort of almost a paneling effect. Like the bit when Penguin's driving and he's like, he just got away from Batman, he thinks, before he happens to hit that tractor trailer ramp that just popped out in front of him. That to me felt so comic booky and cool, and all like the shots of just the tires spinning or just like super weird close-ups on people's faces. I really responded to that, and the fights really popped, I thought, because of that.
Well, and another thing, and then let's let Pete get to his rant. Hold on, I want to respond to what Justin's saying, because the other thing,
this is not fair.
is I felt like
you just went for a long time and said a bunch of crazy shit. And how
Pete,
long do we got to wait to fucking respond to it? Jesus
You're
Christ.
like one of those
You're
cars
bring up new shit that I'm going to get angry about, and I have to go all the way back to that.
All right, go ahead.
You're like one of those cars that you keep pulling back across the floor, and it gets more and more tight and ready
First off, your technically correct way of being like, this is a great movie. I hear what you're saying. Yes, this is an early Batman. This is not the perfect Batman. This is just somebody still trying to figure it out. Okay, great. But what you also got was a fucking Penguin that was unbelievable. Like Colin Farrell disappeared in that, and like I kept listening for the voice to try to get a little bit. Never happened. It was amazing. The Penguin was phenomenal. The Riddler was awful. Catwoman was great. The whole fucking time Bruce was a complete asshole to Alfred. That was ridiculous. Alfred wakes up out of a coma and he's smirking next to him like, you piece of shit, you lied to me. Who the fuck are you?
Maybe you saw The Jungle Book, because I'd be pretty mad too if I saw that guy in the hospital and I was like, this is a bad version of the movie Andy Serkis.
But also Gordon was just...
This is one of the wildest conversations we've ever had.
Jeffrey Wright as Gordon was just unbelievable. Really great.
What?
Yeah.
Jeffrey Wright as Gordon, he spent the whole movie being like, hey, we got to get out of here. Hey.
Did you see the mustache, though? A mustache was doing all the fucking work, man.
Mustache,
it was beautiful.
You could look at a mustache in a photograph. This is a movie. And Jeffrey Wright as Commissioner Gordon was, it's like someone hit him with a sledgehammer before every scene.
No
he was
way.
like,
dude,
like,
if you're the commissioner of fucking Gotham,
he's not.
He's
not.
Well, almost.
He's just a random detective. He was like,
stop.
He'd be like, hey,
your city's on fire and there are crazy
I'm
people running
throw something out
and
at you,
you're going to be
Justin.
cool. You're just going to be like, hey, this is a normal day.
Because
I talked to a fucking mass vigilante. It's fucking cool.
I kind of loved Jeffrey Wright's Gordon, and here I'm going to throw something out at you, Justin. I'm going to throw out why I liked it, because to me, they made a very specific choice to make him the Watson to Batman's Sherlock Holmes. And Watson is always like, crikey, Sherlock, what is going on here? And Sherlock's like, well, I just figured out this whole mystery. And Watson's like, oh, jeez. And that's exactly what...
Watson.
Thank you very much. I'm auditioning for Sherlock Holmes 4, and I don't think it's going well. Jeffrey, this is what I liked about Jeffrey Wright, because all of his delivery was so goofy in such the specific way, and I imagine that's probably the thing that bothered you. But just to call out two things in particular that I keep thinking about several days later after seeing the movie. But one, when they're in the interrogation room and the cops want to arrest Batman, and Gordon goes up to him and he's trying to give him this plan to get out, the way Jeffrey Wright delivers it is so funny, and I think purposefully funny.
Amazing.
Like, in a way you don't expect it, where he's like, come on, you're going to go down this hallway and you're going to walk out.
I even love the way he leans
that
in
was
like he's
very
angry,
funny.
like, you go down the hallway.
And it was a choice. Like, I understand why you didn't like the choice, but they made a specific choice there, and I think it was on purpose. The other thing that I'll mention, that I'll let you go in on it, Justin, is I think one of my absolute favorite lines of the movie that made me laugh out loud is when they go into the abandoned, burnt-out orphanage, and Gordon pulls out his gun. Batman says, no guns. And Gordon's like, that's your deal, man.
That's your deal, bro. Don't put that on me, man.
It's so funny.
It was, and I agree with you. It was funny. It made me laugh a lot, but I felt like it did take me out of the scene, because it felt like you're saying, Alex, like a meta performance. He was very much like, had goldfish brain the whole time. He was like, whoa, you believe this? There's another riddle here. What's all these riddles? There's some sort of Riddler out there. And they're like, I know.
Batman, to me, is an unbelievable actor, and anything he does, I'm on board. So I'm not.
I
do like it, but his
performance is an unbelievable actor.
Yeah, that's right.
What
Batman performs as Bruce Wayne. He performs as Bruce Wayne.
Dude, he was just lurching around every time. He was like, hey.
Oh, you can't see this, but on the audio podcast,
it's like me.
Pete just
like,
flattened his hair.
You're obviously Batman. Any fucking guy could just look and go, this guy's Batman. Look at the way he's staring at everybody.
I did think it was an interesting choice. I loved Robert Pattinson's Batman. I did think it was a weird, interesting. I agree with you, Pete. Like there is certainly like throughout the movie, Bruce is so coiled with rage and can barely move that how anybody doesn't know whatever he is, is kind of wild. But there is also the implication that he barely comes out in public, so nobody interacts with him anyway. So to that, I don't think they would necessarily suspect him as Batman because there's no reason to suspect him.
The only reason it works is because like Superman and glasses work in this world, because otherwise it's fucking insane.
Well, it's very dark, and as we learned, the rain in Gotham is it's like tropical or something. It's just boring.
But
and then the water coming in at the end, I was like, what is this loose? Everything's wet.
But
go ahead, Pete. Sorry.
I was going to say, even like Falcone had a line who's like, "Oh, I'm really good with faces. Hey, what's up, Bruce?" And then just looking at Batman, just staring at him, going,
Yeah, I think you're right, though, Pete. You kind of just gotta have to go with it at this point in superhero movies because that's part of the thing. Like, if instantly everybody's like, "You're Batman," that's not fun. There's nothing interesting about that.
In fact, when Paul Dano does know him at the end, I thought that was cool. And I know you said you hated Paul Dano as a Riddler. I liked it. My issue was the plot was so. Like, they lost the thread. They all became Gordons at the end, where the whole, like, rat with wings, I was like, what are you guys doing? They're like an eagle has wings. I was really
like, you know what also is a rat with wings? A bat. You know what's also a rat with wings? Like, what are we doing?
It was wild to me, and I understand this was a structural thing. It was wild to me that
this
the
building
first
behind
thing...
me, if you think about it, right?
Why did it take them so long to say bat? That was the thing that was crazy to me. Like, Batman standing there.
We were all thinking bat. I mean, honestly, at that point, I was like, I wish he was the wordler, and we just had to figure out a one word of the day.
Like, come on, give me an R. Give me
an I want to get back to the Riddler's plot in a second. The one thing that I wanted to say about the rain, and this is the part for me, this is like a quarter into the movie, I think, if I remember correctly, where it's sort of crisped in this idea that the stuff that I thought was funny on purpose. There's a news report when Bruce is in his Batcave that he's watching. I think it's the second murder or something like that.
On the first television ever made? Is that what you're talking about? Where
yes,
it's
something
weird,
like that.
Blurred out kind of.
Yeah. But he's watching the news report, and there's a news ticker going on the bottom, and I always look at the news ticker in case there's Easter eggs or whatever. And in this case, it was just weather reports. It was just different areas of Gotham or around Gotham, and every single part of the weather report was rainy, fog, heavy rain, clouds, rain, heavy. And that I was like, okay, this is the sort of thing they're doing, is they're putting in these things where it's not, don't get upset with me saying this, but like often the Marvel style of jokes will be stopping the movie to be like, whoa, get a look at this thing, or what's going on here? Like it's very sitcom-y often is what they lean on in a worst case scenario. But this, just let the stuff fly under the radar. And if you caught it, you caught it. And if you didn't, you didn't. And I think that is what worked for me about it.
Well, and I was like on that. I feel like that's a successful formula for DC to move forward on, is to have it be really in-world jokes. Like if you're saying like Commissioner Gordon works as a comedic element of this movie, then that's what they should be doing. Because I agree, they just can't do the like one-liner, like Chandler from Friends style Marvel superhero experience. So lean into this, because I think this, outside of some of the plot stuff we were talking about, does work for them. And it feels comic booky, because in comic books it's like wild action, horrible dark shit, and then someone will just throw a joke in as you turn the page, because the page sort of erases your brain a little bit. And I think they did a good job with that. Like when you turn a page, you move forward in the story.
You're mind wiped?
Yeah, I get mind wipe after every page.
Yeah, when I'm reading a comic book, same thing happens to me. I flip the page, completely forget everything in my life, and then I have to flip backwards and start at the beginning of the comic book. I've only read one page of a comic book so far.
But that's why I'm so lost with how Batman's parents died in this movie.
They don't really establish that. Now,
Also, why are they working so hard to be like, yo, your dad made poor business decisions, okay? And also, one time, maybe your mom went to a mental health place.
So,
That's
well, let's get into this because
what are we doing with that?
They do a fair amount of retcon with the Waynes,
Yeah.
but I felt like they did it in an effective manner. I'm not a huge fan of like the Amazing Spider-Man method, the talking about the movies where it's like everything you knew was wrong and his origin is different and this changes everything, because ultimately what I felt like they did really smart. I'm shaking my shoulders. Should I flatten my hair? The
What are you shaking your shoulders for?
I don't know. It's just a thing I do. It's like a fun thing. Again, it's something I do on auditions, and so far it hasn't worked, but I'm going to keep pushing it.
Yeah, and those of you listening who can't see this, we are dancing almost the entire time we're recording. Pete's doing hair stuff, Alex's shoulders. I'm doing high kicks every time I'm talking. Just to put that in your head.
Well, what I wanted to talk about with the retcon stuff is what I think they did effectively here is they added information about the past of the Waynes, Thomas and Martha, that made them feel like real people, presented Bruce with faults that they have, but ultimately ended up in a place where it's like, no, they're still good people. They just have flaws in them like everybody else. And that was the ultimate theme of the movie. And that's the ultimate thing that Bruce realizes. And like, this is a very superhero thing that happens on a lot of shows and a lot of movies, but he realizes that there are shades of gray in the world. It's not all fear and vengeance, and that's it. And that's the only thing he needs to strike in people. There needs to be these other things that are going on. And that's what he gets through this, that ultimately, like, instead of deifying his parents, he realizes they are good people who tried to do the right thing and sometimes made mistakes, and that's okay. And that's the same thing Batman is doing throughout the entire movie, which I think is great too.
I agree with you. I like the retcons, and I liked Martha being an Arkham and getting into that. Like, that's cool. That actually helps to be like, hey, that's why Bruce is like a little off. Like his mom, like there's some mental illness in the family.
To me, it tracks. You're trying to be like, oh, that makes sense because his mom one time went to a mental health facility, so that means the son's going to throw on a mask and try to dress up at night.
I'm not saying it's that one-to-one, but I do think, to Alex's point, like, it always was like they were perfect except for this one thing happened, and then Bruce waged a lifelong war on crime that destroyed every other aspect of his life. They're more real people who had their struggles, had their issues, and so naturally the son, who is deifying his parents, has his issues with them and because of them. It just felt like it made a whole picture. This movie put together a whole package for the Wayne family.
Well, it was 3 hours long. I hope they could fucking.
They had the time. They had the time.
Well, and also just
because I'm really glad that we got a part where he was like, "Hey, Catwoman, we're gonna split up. Cool, but I'm gonna just ride along next to you for a little bit longer, and then we'll go separate ways." But we'll
they broke up
for like 3 minutes, and then your bike will go one way, and then sadly my bike will go another way.
Well, it's a little known fact that they brok up, together, but the motorcycles were also dating, and it took them longer to get to their breakup. So they wanted to just have one.
You
last
don't have
dance.
the word balloons; it's hard to follow.
Should we talk about Catwoman now? I thought Zoe Kravitz was fantastic. I loved how she was worked into the plot of the movie. I loved this parallel of them not being orphans, but essentially orphans, paralleling also with the Riddler at the same time. I thought that was just a really strong theme throughout, like an obvious one, but I think they worked it really well. And it made her feel part of the action and feel part of the mystery without doing the very typical thing that they do in this movies, where it's like, people all have separate origins and then they end up on this collision course. Here, the information, and I think this is true of everything, rolled out through Batman's perspective. So we meet Selina through Batman's perspective. She ultimately forms an identity of her own and has an arc of her own, but it all ties back into Batman. And same thing with all of the characters, including the Riddler, which I thought was really nicely done.
All right. We'll get into the Riddler in a second, but I agree. I thought the Catwoman stuff was great. I also love the Bat and Cat shout out to people who are reading the comics right now. So, I thought it was done really well. It was a great way of showing, not telling, that these people, although can have a lot of fun together realize that they are different, and one is like trying to live within the law and separate right and wrong. The other one doesn't give a fuck at all and was like, I'll rob anybody in this motherfucker. So I think it was fun and well done. But the Riddler was not good, and we got.
So wait, so just on that, Pete, do you think that you and Alex are going to ride away on your separate motorcycles pretty soon, based on your different worldviews?
Our motorcycles have been dating
Knock
for
on
a
wood,
couple
let's
weeks
hope
now,
so.
and it's going really well.
Congrats.
I'm a four wheels guy. I don't roll on two.
One other thing before we move on to the
Roller
Riddler,
skates?
or maybe many more things that I want to mention about Catwoman is I also thought they did, this gets back to the comic booky nature of it, I thought they did a really nice job of actually weaving in little bits from various comic book storylines without blatantly adapting it or bringing it in there just as fan service. It's something that Marvel does really well, is touches on these storylines but not feeling beholden to them. And here they did the same thing very explicitly, I think, with Long Halloween, for example, with the Selena Carmine Falcone stuff. It's not by any means the plot of Long Halloween, but so clearly their relationship there. I loved... This gets back to like sort of the very sort of subtle jokes and the way that they're working in stuff from the DC universe here. But just like as an Easter egg that almost doesn't matter, when Selena reaches up and scratches Carmine Falcone's cheek, that is directly from Long Halloween, something that I remember very clearly that they flash back to because he has the cat claw slash. So little things like that they're working in there and they're peppering throughout, I thought were really, really good and overall just added to Selena's arc.
And I agree. And I really liked Zoe Kravitz in the role and thought it was handled smartly. It wasn't like aggressively about their romance, which I feel like other Batman movies and other Batman comics have made that mistake where it turns into this love affair where they're also like solving this crime without high stakes. It just feels a little bit too much all at once. This felt a little bit more like, oh, there's some chemistry there and they care about each other, but they're just they have enough time to kiss a couple times. And then they're beating people up the rest of the time. So that was cool. And then on the comic book side of it, I thought we were almost setting up a no man's land at the end of this movie, which I much preferred that to the other thing that was set up at the end of this movie.
Well, yeah, let's get to sequels and stuff in a second once we're done talking through everything. Pete, do you want to address the Riddler of it all?
Yeah, like the fucking part where like he's just like he's got a part of his trench coat just it's like he had a bucket hat and just pulled it over his fucking face. Like this is not a good outfit. This is not
you're so mad at wardrobe and hair and makeup in this
I could
movie,
be wrong, but isn't this very explicitly the costume that the real life Zodiac killer wore?
Oh, Jesus Christ.
No, I think so, because like there was a whole thing. I'm not totally familiar with the case, but I believe the Zodiac killer very explicitly like dressed as a supervillain, and that was the vibe that he was trying to give off. And so they based it on this. This movie is also partially based on Zodiac by David Fincher, so that's the call out there.
It felt very referential to that movie and just the Zodiac Killer and all the ciphers.
Yo, shout out to my boy, the Zodiac Killer.
No, dude, that's not
Shout
cool.
out to Chucky Manson.
No, shout out. Dude, who are you? You have a family, bro. What the fuck?
I have 500 followers on that weird site that the Riddler's on.
I hope your trench coat. I hope your trench coat crew shows up and realizes shotgun.
Alex is huge in the
I'll tell you what,
community.
First of all, the cops being impressed that he had 500 followers was very funny. And then the follow-up of the video.
Very specific thing to yell during that moment. He has 500 followers. Might be important later, guys.
Yeah, the Paul Dano's YouTube/Twitch streamer voice when he got it, he's like, hey guys, thanks so much. So funny. That made me laugh.
That one where it's like he just comes into the screen and then it's like part of him. I was like, oh my God, this guy's been alone in a room for too long. This is
and on that, because the convoluted nature of the Riddler plot by the end, I was like, so wait, you anticipated all of Batman's moves up until this point? Like the whole bring him into the light. I was like, how? You had that set up that you were going to be there and that was naturally going to come there. I thought it was a little, it doesn't make me think that person's smart. It makes me think that they guessed a little bit. Like it wasn't that Sherlock Holmes moment that I think they were pointing toward throughout. Because I actually liked that they struggled with it and weren't perfect every time. Like so many Riddler plots, or like Batman's like, got it, and just has the answer. I'm like, that's so it's very hard to keep doing that over and again. But I so that part was a little convoluted and a little convenient for me from a writing perspective. But when the 500 guys showed up, all dressed like him, and then we had the vengeance moment.
Like who can buy that kind of trench coat and do that?
That's how you track them. Follow the trench coat. Follow the money.
Like,
There was a thing in there. There was on the site. There was a whole thing about army surplus, and they had a link there that clearly those guys were buying this stuff.
Well, and that felt
site.
very, very alt-right there. And like, I thought that was a reference, sort of our current cultural reference that was done well, effectively, without being too heavy-handed with it. And then putting it back on Batman with the vengeance line from the guy at the end, I thought was great. That caught me off guard as like, oh, smart. He's contributing to this culture, and he needs to be a different thing for Gotham. He doesn't need to be... At the beginning, he's like, I scare the shit out of criminals, but I don't even have to be there and they're scared. Right. And then he's like, maybe I should show up and help people a little bit rather than just scaring everybody. I thought that was a great transformation for Batman and something that they just showed us and didn't explicitly tell us.
Yeah, because it went from like, I'm fighting to I'm going to put this red flare in the air and then help people get across.
That
shot, swamp walk.
Yeah, the swamp walk shot was gorgeous. That was a beautiful, beautiful shot.
Yeah, you could tell
great.
Everybody was like that was like, hey, you guys got to stick around and see the shot that I'm going to do in the dark. It's going to be unbelievable. Like, you got to see it.
Yeah.
The Riddler knew that.
A couple of things just sort of bouncing around this a little bit, but the thing afterwards, I felt a little weird about the idea that everybody was on the top of Gotham Square Garden with the flooded city, which clearly seemed to call out to New Orleans and the Superdome and Katrina.
No, don't put that out there.
No, I think it was pretty clear.
I had that in my head. Yeah,
and I thought that was kind of a strange reference. It was okay, but I wasn't sure what to take away from that. I also did really like the arc. I thought, like, this is another thing about Batman is every single Batman movie before this, he's always been like, no guns. And then the Batmobile has guns and he's blasting stuff and shooting things up and making things explode.
Well, he shoots a garage door a lot.
Sure.
Yeah.
But this was a Batman that like felt true to the comics, legitimately had the no guns rule. So you started from a place of like, I like the action in that first scene. Even though he's being brutal, you can see him sort of pulling back his punches as he's hitting people. Yeah. Like he's being brutal to the point that he feels he needs to be brutal rather than going past that. So it's almost a small arc that he goes on from the beginning to the end where he realizes going from fear to hope. That's what he does. But ultimately, his methods are going to stay the same. He just needs to change the way that he's doing it internally. So I really like that quite a bit.
And on that, I feel like, just one sec, Pete, and then it's yours. I think so many other Batman movies, maybe all of them, it's like, he's like, well, solved. I beat those villains. Now back to hell, into darkness. And I was like, to have it be different in this movie, I was like, yes. He's changed a little bit rather than just like walking back to the guano cave and getting into his mess.
Nice Ace Ventura reference. I appreciate it. All right, so first off, the kind of like, I did not think he was pulling his punches. It seemed like this guy was very unhinged and had to learn a little bit more control because beating the shit out of the henchman does not get you anywhere. So like there was a bunch of times where it was like, hey, Batman, stop hitting that person. And he even hit Gordon. Gordon's like, you didn't pull your punch. He was like, I was pulling my punch. Okay, kind of funny. But like the whole point is he hasn't learned to do that yet. I do like where he started to where he got, and there's the whole this growing thing. But what I'm confused about is where's the fucking ninja training? Because this guy's walking right down the middle of the hallway, fucking just punching people. There is no using the shadow. There's no I'm born in darkness. Okay, I hope that comes later because this is kind of like year one Batman. Okay, I guess. But it was like,
it's year two, just to clarify.
Okay,
like
yeah,
very specifically. Two.
But
I understand what you're saying, Pete, and I think that's a fair point. But at the same time, the just the audio of every time he came in with the boots thuming on the floor, I thought was so cool.
A lot of boots shots, a lot of heavy boot shots. There was like that person who was killed. They were really focused on her boots.
Well,
and then it was like Batman's
I think
like,
what they did.
I've got these clunky big boots. These some shit.
No. I think
Again,
what they did,
wardrobe,
and this comes down
Again
to
with
the
the wardrobe.
score as well, is I think they looked at him a little more as like a Western gunslinger. Like that's what I kind of got there from the twang of the guitars that Michael Giacchino.
I think it's Giacchino.
Giacchino.
I don't know though. Actually, now that you say that,
whatever his name is, amazing musical artist. But I think like there was a little bit of a sense of Western, and that's why you got him coming out of the shadows there, walking like that with the boots and everything. But I think that's a fair point. At the same time, they were very clear that he's not great at everything. I loved when he jumps off the building. When he does that dive on the building.
Oh, that whole thing was like
so cool.
Scary.
That was awesome. And then when he gets
fast,
caught on the bridge and slams into the car.
Great.
Great though. So well done. I just love that moment. And it was so smart to be like, he's very cool. He's Batman, but he still has a bunch to do before he becomes like ultimate style Batman.
And this was he was heavy. The boots were heavy. Like he felt thick. He felt like he took so many hits. He took so many bullets. Like he was like a piece of iron. And I actually like that a little bit better than sort of the ninja, like, dancing between the raindrops.
Don't take away part of his
Batman.
fucking.
I'm not taking it away,
story.
but we also did that with Batman Begins and all that. So like, I'm comfortable moving into this little more hard-boiled Western noir influence, like detective story Batman for this new run of probably 3 movies.
What's upsetting is you're taking away like the animated series, A Mask of the Phantasm, when you say those horrible things away, because that leaned heavily on his ninja kind of like learnings and upbringings, which I think is something that is important for the Batman character. So for you to kind of brush that aside is a little upsetting.
Not brushing it aside. I'm saying, hey, let's get a couple other stories in here. And if you want the ninja thing, you can go back and watch any of the things you just did, or go watch like a ninja dance or whatever you want. You have a lot of freedom.
But also,
wait, I'm sorry. Where can I watch ninja dances? I would love to see a ninja dance. That sounds amazing.
Who are you going to ninja prom with?
Oh my god!
They also had a shout out to that though. That was the very first
ninja
shot
prom
of the
got
movie.
A shout out.
Yeah, Ninja Prom got a shout out. Batman came out and was like, Ninja Prom, dance. No, the shot of the mayor's kid. He was dressed as a ninja. He's playing, he's a red ninja in the shot as the Riddler's watching him. So I think like that shot obviously is supposed to make you think, oh, okay, this is Bruce. This is young Bruce. They're about to go see, I assume, the first G.I. Joe in theaters or something like that, and that his parents will be killed outside. But then it turns out to be somebody else. But it's also a shout out to like, yeah, we know this origin happened. We're moving past that.
But it was a weird coincidence where it was like 20 years ago to this day, we have another orphan kid, and it was like pretty random. And I was just like, whoa, that's kind of coincidence there.
Yeah, orphans usually never happen on the same day.
20 years ago to the day?
Here's the thing. There are new orphans made almost every day of the week.
Oh, man.
So
for the price of a cup of coffee, you can...
Here, I want to throw something out, just overall thought about the movie. And you were mentioning that you really liked the vengeance line. I agree. I thought that
seriously,
was really nice.
Guys... The Riddler didn't bother you. That fucking...
No, I like the Riddler. I knew what to expect going in.
I thought the performance was good.
Yeah, Paul Dano was good.
And I didn't mind the costume. I thought was fine. I
really?
The references were I was fine with it.
Here was my big problem is I felt like it went on one act too long. And what I mean by that is when they got to the Riddler's apartment, that to me, that was the end of the movie. I was actually impressed. I was like, oh, maybe they're actually going to end this here. They've unraveled this mystery. We'll have 1 or 2 more scenes wrapping it up. This is great. And then we got the seawall exploding and the big action sequence. And it kind of lost me a little bit because it felt like we've already wrapped up the main conflict between the Riddler and Batman. And this just feels like we got to go out big because it's a Hollywood movie. We have to have this big action sequence. We have to have the final battle between Batman and an electrical box and really see how that comes out at the end there.
And he got electrocuted.
Yeah, he could have got... I thought he was like killing
and
himself.
I understood the point
like,
of it.
Dude, what are you jumping into that water for? I'm pretty sure it's electrocuted.
I understood the point of it. I understood why it was there. I understood why they felt it needed to be there, but that was nowhere near as interesting to me as the other 2.5 hours before or whatever happened there.
Well, I think it's funny that you bring up that apartment because it was an important part where Batman was like, oh yeah, this murder weapon is also what common folk use to pull up carpet. Oh, I didn't know that tool. I thought it was just to murder people. And then someone who was actually...
And then he barely pulls up the carpet, mind you. He's like, little piece of wood, carpet up.
And then he was like, I like how they didn't notice the blinking lights. At first, they were like, okay, this is a map. And then they go back to the thing, and it's like, the blinking lights are the explosions. What? Let's look back. Oh, there are blinking lights.
As regular Joes, how many carpet yankers do you have just right at hand right now?
I got to get a new carpet yanker because I'm constantly yanking my carpets.
Yeah, my carpets need a yanking. Yeah. All right, guys.
Should we talk about? Go ahead. Jason.
Well, just one last thing on the being tired, literally being tired during this movie. I agree the narrative, because it did come to completion, and they were like, one more thing. I think if they flipped them and had the Riddler reveal this thing, maybe right as they're catching him, or sort of did combine the scenes a little bit, it would have worked way better. Because having the Riddler being at Arkham already and just like sort of laughing and being mad, literally looking up the window to see the action happening, I was like, what? It just felt like, yes, the movie had ended and this character was still in the theater watching Batman fight other stuff.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about future stuff, because obviously the big thing that we haven't mentioned here is a tease towards the end in Arkham Asylum, where Riddler realizes his plot has not been foiled because he actually won. It was completely successful, I guess, except for killing the mayor. But otherwise, everything really
Justin brought that scene for a second. And so during the kind of Riddler monologue in Arkham, we get the fact that Bruce Wayne was the key, but he doesn't know Bruce Wayne is Batman. Like, it was this interesting way that he was like, Bruce Wayne, and then was talking about him like he wasn't there, and then kind of Batman got to relax and be like, oh, he doesn't know it's me. I thought that was a well done kind of moment.
Yeah, I agree. It's ridiculous that he doesn't know that he's Bruce Wayne.
Yep.
Yeah.
Per what we were talking about earlier, but
yes,
I thought it was.
But that was it was an interesting way to kind of like have us all think he knew, but then, you know what I mean? I thought it was cool.
So we do get that extra scene at the end there with the Riddler when he realizes that Batman has foiled his plot, and he's really upset about it. And he starts talking to another inmate who has a very particular laugh to him. This was annoying.
Fully agree. For a million reasons. The idea that
laugh was awful for starters.
It was scary. You're saying it was scary, Pete, right?
No.
Oh. It's crazy to me. They're like, yeah, we let all the Arkham people talk to each other. They can just chit chat all day long if they want, because that's how they get better, by saying crazy things to each other. A, B, I was like, we're not doing the Joker again, guys. We can't do this again. We just did it so many times. We've done it so many times. Right now, including this guy, there are like 5 Jokers floating around in the world.
Joker No Way Home. That's what we need. Bring them all together. So this is Barry Keoghan. I never know how to pronounce his name either. Who was recently...
Did anybody else think it was Dave Franco at first when he started talking? Because it had like a weird... I was like, is that Dave Franco doing the Joker laugh?
Off of the after party? No, it was Barry Keoghan. And the idea here... So I thought this was interesting, and honestly would have made me like this scene better, because apparently the idea of this scene was not to be like, next movie, here comes the Joker. In fact, Matt Reeves has said, no, I don't know what the next movie is going to be. I don't think it's going to be the Joker. The implication here was more that initially they took out that scene, showed it to people, and people were like, what a happy ending for Batman and Catwoman at the end here. And they were like, oh, hold on a second. We got to put that in to give this implication that, no, there's always going to be villainy in Gotham. Everything is always going to be bad. And that's why they put that in there. So, or put it back in. There was actually another scene that they filmed with Barry Keoghan, and the idea with that was earlier in the movie when Batman finds out that there is a serial killer on the loose. He goes and consults with somebody in Arkham Asylum who is a previous serial killer that he caught, who is Barry Keoghan's the Joker. So apparently the way that was filmed, it was like very out of focus, but also very like Hannibal Lecter, Clarice Starling type thing. And so there were both of these scenes in there to do parallel. They cut it out because I guess it was impeding the flow of the movie in a different way. But to me, I almost wish
3.5 hours. They only had 3 hours.
Yeah, but there's a way that like I almost wish that was in there earlier, because I think that would have justified more of that scene in the end, rather than feeling like the opposite of what they wanted it to feel like, which Matt Reeves has explicitly said, it's not a Marvel style, here's the next movie tease. It was more just the overall fabric of Gotham.
Right.
Well, but I mean, like, you're going to get that because of where it was and what it was. So, like, and I was also like, just choose another villain. The Batman's whole thing is having a great bunch of villains that we could.
If you want, yeah, just.
What's a good villain we could have seen here instead of Joker?
There was a brief moment just because of what we saw of his face that I thought maybe it was actually
Two-Face.
Yeah, I thought maybe it was going to be Two-Face, and then he said the thing about clown, and I was like, oh boy, here we go.
Yeah,
I agree. I thought it was Two-Face, and I was sort of fine with that. But I was like, no, we just did Two-Face as well. So like let's get Black Mask in there, or
it was specifically a shout out to the scene from Long Halloween with Calendar Man, right? Mm-hmm. Like, because isn't it Calendar Man and I'm forgetting who it is. I don't think it's Riddler. It might be the two of them talking in Arkham Asylum.
I think it is Riddler.
It might be Riddler.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a ton of different villains you can get. You don't have to keep going to the same well. You know what I'm saying, Justin?
I understand the impulse there, but it was a bummer. Yes, go ahead, Pete.
There are two more things I kind of want to talk about. There was this interesting setup that they kept saying of like, oh, if Gotham finds out, they'll explode. Oh, this will tear Gotham to shreds. Like, seriously? You think finding out that cops are dirty and Gotham is really going to make this fucking town lose its mind? There's mass vigilantes. There's a penguin guy. There's a fucking Catwoman. I don't think that's going to be like, oh, the cops are corrupt. Whoa, Gotham, look out. Like, that was not a big enough reveal for me to be like.
Well, I think the reveal, the ultimate plot, and maybe I have this wrong, is the idea that it's not about the cops being dirty. It's about Carmine Falcone runs everything. There is no mayoral race, this one thing that is giving people hope. There is no renewal fund, again, the thing that has been giving the people of Gotham hope. Ultimately, it's all Carmine Falcone. Like, that's the secret there at the end of it that is going to tear it apart, because it's going to tear out, like, that one remaining shred of hope that the city has left. And ultimately, they take down Carmine Falcone. It is revealed, but they get that new hope that they can hook on Batman at the end there. And I feel like that's probably the whole idea.
Okay. And then it just brings me to my last question. I mean, the poor people of Gotham, I mean, after all that they have been through, like, why would you stay? Like, the rent's got to be crazy cheap, right? I mean, that's got to be the only reason. I mean, you've been gassed. You had to, like, decide which fairy was going to die. I mean, you turned into different kinds of animals. I mean, at one point, do you say, hey...
Turned into different kinds of animals?
Different animals.
I mean, like, Gotham's been through a lot. Like, why would you still stay in Gotham?
I mean, this is a perennial question, and I think it's the same exact thing as how does nobody know that Bruce Wayne is Batman? If there was nobody living in the city, it would not be a lot of fun.
Yeah. Not a lot of crimes or people here. Just driving around.
Gonna rob something? Nope, no banks, no money. Sorry.
Yes, I think maybe people just love the rain. Alfred, we didn't talk about Alfred in this movie. Sure. Obviously, Pete is always in the tank for Alfred. I think this Alfred was influenced by Gotham, the TV show, I thought. It's the first Alfred that I was like, oh, this dude could wreck some shop. This dude looked,
I agree.
And he was contributing.
He was very similar to Sean Pertwee's Alfred on Gotham, and I think that was fine. I think Andy Serkis was clearly muting it down quite a bit. I didn't really feel like he was Alfred necessarily, but it was all right. I was good with him.
He was more like Chris Christopherson in the Blade movies.
Yeah. Okay. Well, first off, don't even bring up that whole thing. Jesus Christ, it's going to get me all teary-eyed. But secondly, it was...
trigger that makes you cry instantly. Listen up, fans. You want to make Pete cry in person? Just say the name of a foolish name, Chris Christopherson.
Oh, come
a
on,
name
man.
that has two Chris's in
on,
it. It's got two Chris's in it.
You double down on the Chris? You believe in Chris or not? Well, then you double down. Anyways,
yeah, Pistofferson.
My point being, Alfred was kind of a non-factor in this movie, and was just constantly shit upon by Bruce, and Alfred had a very touching kind of monologue a little bit after he got over the initial Bruce being a complete dick to him once he woke up out of a coma. But it was a very touching thing and reminded me very much of some of the comic stuff that we got.
Well, I thought it was funny that he was like, "It's my job. It was my job to protect them." I was like, "You're the butler. It was your job to prepare tiny sandwiches."
Oh, come on, man.
I mean, he's a butler
but he has a
bodyguard
point. He was more
aspirations.
age appropriate than a kid to jump in front of a bullet. You know what I mean?
But he was the most appropriate to carry a drink on a silver tray to the party.
Yeah, and those silver trays can block bullets.
Another couple of quick moments, and then we should probably talk about future stuff, what we see potentially happening in a sequel, as well as there's a couple of spin-off series in the works. I just want to reiterate what Pete said earlier. I thought Colin Farrell was fantastic as the Penguin.
So
excited for that series.
There were a lot of things in this movie that watching the trailers, I was like, I'm not looking forward to this. This looks stupid. Like, for example, Colin Farrell's Penguin. And it ended up being one of my favorite parts of the movie, which I was really surprised about. Or I'd read this thing from Matt Reeves where he talked about the Batmobile. He said he was inspired by Christine in the movie, and he wants it to be scary, like really horrifying. Yeah. And I was like, that sounds stupid too. And then when it happened in the movie, it was awesome. When the Batmobile came out and Penguin was looking terrified, I thought that was great.
Yeah, but can we talk about that when we first saw it, though? Like, when we first saw the Batmobile, there's this shot where it's like, and then stops moving. And for a second, I thought, like, oh, did the Batmobile die? Did it
lose a wheel?
Down? Yeah, is it okay? But then everything's fine. Didn't you think that weird stop-start thing was kind of a weird thing to have with the car?
Yes, but I think that, to me, that pointed to, it's year 2. He built this car. It's there's too much fire coming out of it in random places, and so it breaks down a little bit. Okay. I will say, when the car shows up and everyone's like, yikes, I was like, yeah? Criminals are scared of this car? The car's coming to get you?
I don't know. I liked it. I thought the way I understand what you're saying, but I think the way the scene played out really worked for me. So I thought that was fun.
I loved the action that the car then happened. I thought that was a lot of fun to see.
I also really liked the bit at the Penguin's door at Club 40. Was it Club 44? No, the Iceberg Lounge door with the twins there.
Batman kept doing the same
Bruce
thing.
Wayne, and then sneaking in. Very fun. That was another thing that I thought was like
Rule 3s.
Yeah, sneakily funny about the movie. That really emphasized to me that they have a sense of humor about this stuff, which was another thing for the trailers. It just felt like it was going to be 3 hours of dour grittiness, and it wasn't that at all. I mean, a little bit, but like it was not 100% that. I think they split it really nicely. So I ended up having a fun time seeing the movie, which I was very surprised about. Let's talk about future stuff and sequels, though. So as Pete mentioned before, they're working on a Penguin origin series for HBO Max. That's one of the things that they're going to do, showing his rise in power through Gotham. And the other one, which has changed apparently a little bit. Initially, there was going to be a Gotham PD series, but apparently as they were working on it, they realized that they were more interested in Arkham Asylum, realized to lean into that more, and are now working on a horror-inspired series set in Arkham Asylum. So those are the two additional things that are coming out there. I can't tell what Pete thinks about these two ideas.
That's a nightmare scenario. I am very excited for the Penguin series. That should be a ton of fun.
Yes, that's going to be cool. I wonder how much sort of superhero stuff it'll be. It feels like it could just be like a gritty crime story, like 6 episodes or however many it is. Like, that's awesome.
Yeah, that's what I kind of hope for both of these things, is they are like very tight 6-episode series, almost aping the Marvel style there in terms of what they're doing on TV.
What they did with Peacemaker. That was great. It was 8 episodes. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, something like that. Like, it doesn't need to be 22 episodes, is I think the point. Just something that tells a nice, tight, focused story in the city. Because honestly, after the movie, I am excited to see more. Another one that I think would be really interesting, and I wonder if they're going to spin off into another movie. It'll be a Batman sequel, or it'll be a series of its own. It felt like a pretty specific tease to have Catwoman saying, "I'm heading to Bloodhaven."
Bloodhaven, yeah.
Which is a city with a whole crime thing of its own. Nightwing usually operates there. What do you think? What's next for Catwoman in particular?
She's just, she's like, oh, you weren't really feeling this, Batman? Well, go, maybe Nightwing will make you a little jealous. Maybe I hang out with Nightwing a little bit. You're like, hey, what's going on? I thought maybe we had a thing. You know what I mean?
I think that to me felt less like a series and more like, if you want me, come find me in the next feature film coming from Matt Reeves.
Yeah.
That's where I live now. I live in the sequel of this film.
Fair
you
enough.
want to come meet me there.
Well,
but I said this, No Man's Land would be a great choice, so it was more environmental with maybe some smaller criminals. Maybe a No Man's Land combined with a Court of Owls thing could be cool. Getting into more of Gotham history and dealing with a disaster. That's the kind of stuff I would want to see, as opposed to another Joker or Two-Face situation coming out.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned this earlier, but I think this is one of, if not the first DC movie that has taken the correct lessons from Marvel, which is pick and choose what you want from the storylines and ignore the rest. Like, we didn't really talk about it here, but this also uses Hush. Like, it takes little pieces of the Hush storyline and then ignores mostly everything from the comic, which frankly is fine. That's not a problem.
Agreed. I was like, when they started getting to it, I was like, how are they going to try to do all this? And then they just didn't. It was such a dream.
But they could do it the same way. Like you're saying, there's No Man's Land stuff that they could take. They already kind of did No Man's Land in Dark Knight Rises a little bit, with the bridges being cut off and the city cut off. They also did it on Gotham, but like, there's elements that you could take there and throw in. I think, like you said, Court of Owls. Clearly, there was a video being passed around, I think it was from a Vanity Fair interview, where Robert Pattinson and Paul Dano were telling Jeffrey Wright, oh, Court of Owls is the coolest story. You got to check it out. The first issue in particular is awesome. So feels like there's a significant push there, and that is something that we haven't seen on screen before.
That would be awesome.
Yes, that would be
very
dope.
Cool. If there was, other than Court of Owls, though, if there was a specific villain that you would want to see in the next movie, who would it be, other than Joker?
Black Mask, I think, would be cool. Like I said, it feels like we
had
in a gritty...
Black Mask and Harley Quinn, though.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Or maybe Mr. Zsasz is another good one. That's actually who I wish they used instead of Joker, and we got like this dude who's got just scars all over from the different victims.
Yeah. Yeah, I wonder what they could do. I mean, they could continue to move through from Long Halloween to like Dark Victory, and maybe even do like the Catwoman in Rome thing. I'm forgetting what the exact name of that is. But there's so many different things that they could pull on that haven't been done before. Whatever it is.
80 years of stories.
Yeah, I'm very excited for whatever the next movie is going to be, because I thought this was a blast.
Going thematically off the amount of pure firebomb explosions in this movie, maybe like Firefly, I think could be a cool like...
well, he's going to be Brendan Fraser is doing Firefly and Batwoman. Not to keep shooting down every single one of your ideas, Justin.
Well, no, everything's the lunch is being eaten.
Yeah, it sure is.
What about just Commissioner Gordon, like finally learning what Batman is a Batman, just having that really hit him at some point over the course of
I've
3 hours
it out.
Right there.
You're Batman.
See? Case closed. How are they gonna? If he's just a beat cop, in the next movie he's gonna be promoted to being commissioner.
Everybody else is dead at this point.
Yeah, exactly. Who else are you gonna promote?
Yeah, I just want to see Commissioner Gordon's funny adventures in Gotham, where he's trying to figure out papers and tripping and falling on stuff, bonking his head like a Mr. Bean. It's gonna be great.
Batman, I'm in danger. This little knob on the door, I can't figure out how to get through it. Can you please come help me?
All right, folks, let us know what you thought of The Batman. You can always hit us up on Twitter at Comic Book Live, or we do a live show every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. to Crowdcast and YouTube coming out. We'd love to chat with you about it there. Also, you can support the show at patreon.com/Comic Book Club, iTunes, Android, Spotify, Stitcher, or the app of your choice to subscribe and listen to the show. As I mentioned, at Comic Book Live on Twitter, comicbookclublive.com for this podcast and many more. Until next time, I'm Vengeance. Good night.
What?
We didn't even talk about that shitty scene after the credits.
It was a website.
We were supposed to do a quick recap of the Batman. We talked for over an hour.
Blow your mind.